captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship is weathered, every wreck the prize we sought is won. The porters hear the bells and hear the people all exulting. While follow us instead and hear the bells.
Hello, and welcome to Melee Stats Deep Dives. Captains. So many famous ones throughout history. We've got Kirk, we've got Jack Sparrow, Crunch, I guess. Even though I think he was a captain and not a captain. And we have another one to etch onto the name of famous captains. We have none other than Captain Faceroll, who I have here today with me. How's it going, Griffin?
It's going well, man. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being on. We've had people who got top 64 and then they would talk about it. We have people who got top 8 and then would talk about it. But this is the first time we had anyone who actually won a tournament that we're going to be talking about. So the honor is all mine. Thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So, this weekend, DreamHack Atlanta 2019, bit of a shakeup, I would say. I know on the episode that we made, we were kind of dismissive of anyone's chances against Mewtwo King to take the tournament, and here I am with egg on my face. But yeah, so obviously if anyone missed the big news, you came into this tournament as a 4 seed. You had Nun and S2J, who are both top 10 to 15 players above you, and then you had Mewtwo King, obviously, who's basically been putting up a top 10 performance this year. And then there's little old you. What's a king to a god?
Or a captain, some may
Or
say.
a captain, some may say. So I want to hear a little bit about what you expected going into this. I don't know if you're one of the players who looks at their brackets beforehand or if you're one of those people who go in blind. But going into this event, what were your expectations for it?
So I do look at my brackets. I think that it is kind of a silly mental block that some people have to, like, I don't know. I don't really believe in like superstitions like that, or like some people kind of psych themselves out. They're like, oh, I have to play Mewtwo King, like, and then they get really nervous about it and they end up performing worse. But I think that that's just like something that those players could work through if they really wanted to. Basically, I think looking at your bracket is just like an objectively good thing, because at the very least, it gives you something to practice towards. Like if I went into this tournament completely blind, right, I might have practiced for just entirely wrong matchups. Like looking at all of the top seeds, there were some DQs, but like what ended up happening in the top 8 bracket is it was very Sheik and Captain Falcon heavy for like the top 5 seeds. Actually, even not counting upsets, the top 5 seeds were Sheiks and Falcons. I guess Mewtwo King maybe might go different character depending on whatever.
Yeah.
But so when going into it, I definitely was thinking more so about those two matchups, and I think that's very important. If I'm thinking about Fox, who's a very common character, but it would ultimately be a waste of time to think about him for this event.
Yeah.
It kind of depended, but there were definitely Foxes, Hacks, Ryan Ford, Coble, but
well,
at the end of the day, none of those made it to. I didn't end up playing them, so
and one of those did not make it to Atlanta to begin with.
Right, but I could. There's definitely a reality where I did end up playing them, but in my head, I saw that my projected bracket was Sheik and Falcon, so that's what I focused on. And yeah, I don't know. I felt pretty good. I mean, I felt like my seed made sense. None has been doing very well, so him being 3, I guess you could argue me, but None as of late, like he beat Mango like this month, so yeah. I mean, whatever, that's fine. And then it also makes sense because I play S2J not super frequently, but frequently enough. So if I were to be 3, then I'd play Johnny in semis instead of Mewtwo King. And like, I think just for like regional stuff, like I'd rather play Mewtwo King in that sense, even if I probably have a better shot, supposedly.
I think there was something Johnny this year with Johnny where I think he played Mike Hayes 3 times and they're all out of region. And I think he was even like projected to play him more than that, but they just didn't always play because of upsets or whatever, which is really funny to me. Like imagine having someone who is in your region and you only play at like Pound and stuff.
Yeah, that's actually so I'm on the SoCal PR panel, and that's actually something where Mango never enters SoCal locals,
Yeah.
but he has head-to-head results versus like the top 8 in SoCal every season simply because of nationals. Like he always plays Johnny, he always plays SFAT. You know, he plays Army here and there, and it's so like despite the fact that he doesn't have any local results, he still has head-to-heads we can look at. And obviously he's Mango, so you know he wins tournaments and stuff. But going into this, I definitely, you know, I looked at my seed and I was like, okay, this makes sense. I'm projected to play Spark, and I was kind of worried about that so I beat him the most recent set we had played prior to this tournament at Smash Camp.
But you had your Genesis set earlier in the year where that was
right.
a 2-0, right?
Right. And so Genesis, he 2-0'd me, and it was like not really that close. It was winnable, obviously, just because of the nature of the matchup, but like he was pretty much in control like the whole set, and I was kind of tilted, and I was getting out, and I was like, But then in Smash Camp, I won, and so we were 1-1 for the year, but like I definitely, that's a matchup where if you're not really in the proper mental state, it can just go south so fast. And like Spark is a player who plays pretty defensively. He's not afraid to like chill on the platforms for a little bit, which makes total sense for, you know, the Sheik Ditto, obviously, just because of the punish game. But like, for me personally, if I'm not really mentally prepared for that, then I can crumble. And if you crumble in a matchup like that, you just get owned. So that happened a little bit at Genesis, I would say. And then Smash Camp, I kind of rallied and brought it together. But I knew that if I wasn't prepared, then that could easily happen again. And it's not like, I think Spark and I are relatively close skill level wise, and obviously, or well, maybe not obviously, but him and I are like two of the like Sheik dittoers. Like most of the other Sheiks, I'm thinking specifically like Shroomed. Doesn't really like the Sheik Ditto. Sometimes he goes Marth. He prefers to not chain grab. And Spark and I are kind of like the chain grab Sheik dittoers of like the active players. Swedish is really, really good at it, but he doesn't like the chain grab, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. You two definitely seem to be like you both. I don't know when he started, but it seems to me that you both kind of rose to prominence at a similar time in terms of top 100. And I think this is the most current ranking that we have is the furthest away you two have been in rank. He was in the 60s when you were in the 40s, or you know he was in the 50s when you were in the 40s, or something along those lines. And similarly, as we see your rise to top 20, we'd see his rise to top 25 or so. So I definitely think that you two have that similarity in both, like in game, like you said about the chain grab, because I think that you two represent like the newer school of Sheik at the top level, but also just like every time one does well, it doesn't take the other one longer to catch up.
Yeah, like Smash Camp, well, maybe this is more relevant to like the top 8 discussion, but there are a lot of parallels between like the Smash Camp bracket in top 8 and this one. But yeah, so going into the tournament, looked at my bracket and I was like, okay, Sheiks and Falcons. I was definitely worried a little bit about the Spark matchup just because I said like I could totally lose. I'm seated higher than him, but only barely, and like I have to like mentally prepare for that. In my pool, like before my matches versus Spark, I wasn't really worried too much. I was projected to play Bobby Big Balls, who ended up not going, but I'm pretty confident versus Falco, and Bobby is like a player where I feel like if I just wait for a little bit, he'll eventually either SD or do something like unsafe. So that was kind of my game plan. I ended up not even playing him, but I looked at my pool, and also at this tournament, wobbling was banned, or I guess limited, you could say, to like 4 pummels or something. So there's pretty much a very low chance of me getting upset. I think I'm relatively consistent player, minus Ices and Puff, but Ices without wobbling, it's like way easier, and I dodged all the puffs. So my pool, I wasn't really too worried about it, and I actually ended up kind of destroying my pool.
Yeah, you had a pretty good draw, all things considered. Like you mentioned, Bobby Big Balls DQing, and even if he were, that's a pretty good 2 seed in the pool for you to play. And then you had H-Twa as the 3rd seed, who that I guess, I mean, obviously, even if it were the Sheik Ditto, you've proven that probably wouldn't be too scary for you. But H-Twa is now being a Fox main, I think. I think he's trying to go Fox full time. So even then, it's probably, your bracket got even better from there.
Yeah, so pretty convenient, all things considered. And actually, I ended up like kind of destroying H12 like very surprisingly. So I seven stocked him.
Oh boy.
It was like really bad.
Somehow not the biggest destruction you've done to a
Yeah.
top player this tournament though.
Yeah, well, so I rewatched the commentary for the set that you're alluding to, and
Yeah.
actually, Sammy Drugfox did mention that like, well, I think it was like Max Ketchum was like, "Wow, this looks worse than like round one pools," and Sammy was like, "Well, actually, you should have seen his winners finals because that was really bad."
Oh boy. I think actually I want to talk about this kind of a little bit later. But I think Sammy's commentary, this is just like one of the most perfect things to line up with you winning a tournament with having Sammy commentate. It's just like all the stars aligned.
Yeah, if I definitely were to like pick what would happen, it would definitely obviously be me winning and like Sammy like being like there. Not only was he like literally watching, but he was like watching over me in that sense. Like he controlled the narrative. It was very nice.
I think it was a great experience watching to have him commentate because he's so knowledgeable in so many things. Of course, his ability to verbalize all the things that you are doing is so important, and I think that it helps the narrative for a lot of players who might maybe not know you as a player who can win a tournament, or maybe not know you at all if they're a little less in tune with the scene. And I think his commentary there was like the perfect entrance to seeing that you are a player who is capable of doing, taking tournaments, beating gods.
Yeah, definitely about as picture perfect as you could get. And honestly, like pretty convenient because I think, not to be like doom and gloom, but there are commentators have a lot more control over narratives and like how people perceive players or play styles or matchups more than I think people might expect. And so, our based off character matchups, I think most people would say that like Sheik Dittos are not that exciting, or that like Sheik Falcon is kind of depressing, depending on what character you lean. And if we had less excitable commentators, I guess, then the whole like narrative of the top 8 as a whole could have been like vastly shifted, I think. But conveniently, that was not the case. And despite the fact that it was chain grab Sheik Dittos for like half of top 8, I don't think was too bad, at least.
It really just shows, I mean, exactly what you said. It really just shows how powerful commentary can be in pushing narratives for players and for matchups. And this could have been a tournament where, despite what's happening on the screen, maybe you get like Max Ketchum, or maybe you get D1 or something like that. Maybe you get people who, despite the fact that they are very good commentators, might not have that same in-game knowledge as Sammy, and then maybe you're getting something that's a little less interesting. So I think like you hit the nail on the head. He is such the perfect candidate to do this.
And a lot of people had very nice things to say about his commentary. So hopefully, maybe he'll be at future events. I mean, not saying he'll be commentating Genesis top 8 or anything, but it would be nice to see him at top 64 or whatever,
Yeah, for sure. As we've gotten into this weird part of Melee where it's very I think we went through a span where it's very good to be a funny commentator, which is very good. I'm not saying it's not, but like I think it is good to have someone who's so analytical as well. Like having Sammy be a commentator who, like, if that's true, like imagine if he goes to more events, imagine if he becomes if he commentates as much as I don't even know, someone who, I'm trying to think of a commentator who might not commentate a ton but is relatively consistent at commentating. I don't know, just imagine you'd see him 4 events a year, 5 events a year. I think that there's a lot of players who could benefit from that just by the virtue of him verbalizing all these things that they're doing to a larger audience.
Yeah. And, obviously I'm a very large Sammy fan, so
yeah,
it would be nice for me selfishly to kind of see what he has to say and experience the game through his lens, if you will.
So let's get back to your bracket right here. I don't know if you were finished talking about your set with Spark. If you want to move on, I want to talk about your set with None at some point. and then we'll get to the big ones.
Yeah. I guess just going in order. Pools, like I said, kind of not that. I don't know. I got a very convenient draw. Like in my 4 seed was LSD, who is a pretty good Marth, but he's one of those Marths that like hates the Sheik matchup, or at the very least thinks he's very bad at it. So that's like pretty much a matchup that's unlosable if you're like in my position. Like someone who not only is worse than me, but also hates the matchup, like pretty much zero chance. And then H2 switched to Fox recently, like full time recently.
Yeah, within the past few months.
And I just gimped him like eight stocks for it. So that was pretty much it. So then we get to my set with Spark, who actually, if you look at the top 24 bracket, I think, I think S2J and Cobol was projected.
Yeah. So Cobol, he was seated above Dreffen in his pool.
Yeah.
So winning that. S2J
so
with the swooper. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but so interestingly enough, there are only two. Like there were a lot of DQs and a lot of upsets throughout brackets. So like me and Spark. And SJ Cobol were actually the only 2 projected matchups. Like if you look at Michi King versus Hi-Fi or like None versus A Rookie, those are just like very surprising things you would see for top 8 qualifiers and winners. But yeah, so I played Spark. Honestly, when I am having a hard time thinking about the winner set, like I'm conflating the winners and the loser set, like in my head, like I'm having a hard time distinguishing what was very particular about that set. But I think like there were a couple games that were really close.
Yeah,
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like in matchups, like in sets, if it's last stock, like last hit, the winner, assuming you get to the point where it's last stock, last hit, I feel like the winner is basically RNG. Like very rarely, because at that point it's only one neutral win. It's like even if one person is the vastly different player, which isn't even the case here, but even if it were to be, like all it takes is one interaction. So I did beat Spark 3-1, but like it would not have been unreasonable for him to win that. But I don't know. Spark also got there like super early in the morning. Not to John for him or anything, but I think I was in a better position to win because they went up to top 8 in the first day. So he had to do all the pools and all that stuff. And
what a true champion, Johning for the person who you beat.
So I beat him and made it to top 8, and then I'm at the top 8 bracket basically.
Yep. I want to save the Mewtwo King set for a bit because I want to hear about all of them, like how you adapted, what you thought the differences were. I want to hear about that all in one chunk. So if we could kind of go out of order, do you want to talk about your second set with Spark? Because I think that was make or break.
Yeah, so my second set with Spark, I mean, I go down 0-2, and very interestingly enough, after the second game, so if you're watching the stream, I don't think they really knew what happened, but so the way the stage was set up is that both competitors have their own separate TV. And so that's usually nice because you have more space and like you can move around. And like some people, when they play, are really distracting. Spark is not this type of person, but some people like kind of flail around and make funny faces. So it's nice to be slightly far from them, just in my opinion. But what that means is that if there's an issue, you're kind of separated from your opponent. So apparently, near the second half of game 2, his TV colors were like distorting. So the game didn't go out on his TV, but the colors changed. So he was like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like all the CRT stuff, but they were on like PVMs and they had component cables. And so since they had component cables, they have like a more like color channels or something. And basically at the end, the second half of game 2, he was playing me in like sepia or like black and white. Like the colors were like changing. And so not only was that happening to him, but he couldn't really convey it to me while playing because we're so far away and we both have headphones in and like we're in the middle of a set, you know. But also he wins that game anyway. And like I don't think that one was super close. Like I don't think it was last stock. So, you know, we finished that game and then he like, you know, motions to me like my TV's like broken. Like, um, so he has one of the TOs come over. I don't think they explained that to the stream very well, but like, yeah. So he was seeing like rainbow colors. Like, I'm pretty sure he beat me in Sepia. Like, not even joking. Like the last 2 socks, I think were just completely Sepia time.
I mean, he plays black and white Sheik, so he just might be used to it.
Yeah. But so that takes a couple minutes, and so that kind of conveniently gave me time. I was like forced to like sit there and sort of like reevaluate what's happening. I'm not the one who had to deal with the problem, so I didn't get any stress from that. I don't really know necessarily if the TV issues affected Spark in the sense, because when it was happening to him, he won the game, so it didn't literally affect the outcome of the set. But mentally, you know, we had to take a break, so he might have lost some momentum. He might have been distressed that, you know, some like hardware malfunction was happening to him.
Yeah, I can't imagine having to be on a big stage. Not only do you have to outplay the top level player who you're playing, but it's outside forces that are like worming their way in. I can't imagine having to do that. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear his side of it, how affecting that was. But well, let's talk about you. We're not here to talk about Spark.
Okay, yeah. So while that's happening, I'm kind of just like thinking about what happens like game 1 and 2, and like I was just being so like dumb. Like I was just like kind of falling for his baits like way too often. I was doing really unsafe moves on his shield. Like some of those interactions are mix-ups, like point blank F tilting or like down smashing, that sort of thing. But they're getting to the point where I was no longer doing them as a mix-up. I was kind of just spamming them, and those moves are unsafe on shield. And so what would happen is I would just like run up to Spark and just F tilt him point blank. He would shield grab me, and then I get chain grab to death or to an edge guard, and that's just like such an awful thing. And like I would just like whiff dash attacks really poorly. I would just like play platform interactions incorrectly. And you know, the later games I just stopped doing that more and more. Like I just started doing better things. Game 3, I'm pretty sure was still last stock. Like I don't think I adapted immediately and then started crushing him, but game 3, I'm pretty sure was last stock, and then game 4 I 2 stocked him, and game 5 I either 2 or 3 stocked him. So I just like made way better decisions, and then obviously the momentum kind of shifts into the person's favor who starts winning, you know, because then maybe he's thinking, oh my gosh, like what if I get reverse 3-0'd? And I'm thinking like, lol, okay, like I'm winning now, you know, like I'm sitting pretty, and then all of a sudden he has to approach me, and then the dynamic is super shifted. And because it's a Ditto, like it's not like he can counterpick me to like an insane stage. Like he can't go like Fox on FD, you know, like he just has to go Sheik on Fountain or something. Like that's it. Like normally when you're up 2-0 like that, your opponent has to win twice on your counterpick.
Yeah, and normally gets mitigated when you're playing a Ditto.
Right, and like our playstyles aren't so different that stages really matter. It's like it just happened to be like I started playing better, and then it's not like he can counterpick me to an insane thing, and then I just ended up winning.
Well, you mentioned momentum earlier, and I think the losers run that you had was pretty much the definition of momentum, starting with that game 3 against Spark. You ended up having a relatively close set with Calvar. I would say I was pretty surprised by that personally. And then you go into losing the next 2 games versus Spark, and then you win 12 games in a row to win. What were your thoughts going through both the Calvar set, and I guess we already talked about the Spark set, but like, how do you think, what was the difference between those, the set and a half that was a little closer, and then the next 2.5 sets that might not have been as close? Was there a mentality difference? Was there like a change in anything that you could mention, or was it just adaptation?
Well, versus like in the Calvar set, like I was just not doing the things that I know I'm supposed to be doing at all. Like I have like a game plan for Smarth. You know, I have notes written down. I know what I'm supposed to do. Edge guarding at this position, down throw follow-ups, like at this percent, how he DIs, whatever. And I just like threw it all out the window and was just like doing the most brain dead, like jumping at the same spots every time, and he would like dash attack me and clip me, and then dash attack pops you up even at 0. So all of a sudden I'm airborne, and then he like up tilts me 4 times, and I take 70% for like basically the most mindless action I could be doing in neutral. And then also I got like we had some weird like rock paper scissors thing. Like he asked to rock paper scissors for port, which is not uncommon at all. Kadoran rock paper scissors for port every time. The port that's a higher number, and so 4 being the highest number, gains effectively 1 extra frame of throw hit stun, which is very relevant for Sheik because she down throws all the time, but it's also especially relevant for Marth because it makes some combos work and some combos not.
And this actually kind of comes into play later in the tournament as well, right?
Yeah, it's super important for chain grabs, definitely. But yeah, we rock paper scissors on shoot, which is a regional thing. West Coast always goes on scissors, but the Midwest and East Coast go on shoot, which is fine. I'm from Chicago, so I'm used to going on shoot. But he asks to do a best of 5, which is like insane to me. And then also I get destroyed. He 3-0s me, and there are no ties, so it's just like rock paper scissors shoot, I lose. Rock paper scissors shoot, I lose. Rock paper scissors shoot, I lose. And then I was just like, it was brutal. So I'm shook from the very beginning. And then
I want to mention quickly before you go on, you told me about this, I heard about this. I think that is possibly the most destructive thing to happen in top 8. In a top 8 where you had a 6-minute set with none, which was a 10 stock, I think you getting 3-0 with no ties in rock paper scissors, I can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah, I just made like super noob errors. Like I don't know if you're familiar with like RPS like statistics or the psychology behind it, but like when someone loses a rock paper scissors like round, very 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 often their next choice will be the thing that beat the thing that they lost to. So if I go scissors and lose to rock, most frequently I'm going to go paper the next time, and he just like read me every time. And then afterwards I was like, why did I do that? Like I wasn't even thinking. I was just doing like the level 1 option, which is very embarrassing. But yeah, so I played Calvar, and I was just playing super bad. Like my edge guards were awful. I didn't sami stall at all. I just let him back. Like I just let him recover like almost every time. My down throw follow-ups were pretty bad. My execution was really bad. And then in neutral, I was just I didn't like adapt at all. Like he dash attacked me 100 times. I like jumped into his stuff. Conveniently, like I don't know. I like in my head, I wasn't really worried about losing, but like I literally could have lost like at any moment. I don't know. I was like, I wasn't even I was not in the proper mindset until like the end of the game. Like when I was actually like, okay, just stay on the ground. He's gonna dash attack you or something. Wave dash back. It's fine. Throw needles. Whatever. Like F tilt when he comes in. Like I don't need to jump. I don't need to do all these dumb like try and like whiff a grab and then die for it.
Yeah, it definitely seemed more disciplined at the end.
Yeah, Calvar, I just played like really bad.
Yeah, and of course, whenever that happens, it's a two-way street, right? Like you could play that way against a lot of people, and it wouldn't matter. So definitely props to him for being able to make it so close, even though you were playing in a manner that obviously wasn't your peak.
Right, and last time we played like at Shine 2019. We played in a lane, like a side event bracket where it's like an exhibition set with there is a prize on the line, but it's not really tournament. But I like destroyed him there, so he definitely got way better at the matchup. At least from the set that we played. Like even within the past couple months, because I think Shine was in August, so he definitely improved a lot in the matchup, and like I could tell mentally. He's also like a Sheik hater, you know, so I could tell mentally that he was definitely better prepared, but like I was just very frustrated with myself. I do not think that was anywhere near like I consider myself to be pretty good at Sheik Marth, and that was like nowhere. Like you should not watch that set if you're trying to learn Sheik Marth. Is on.
Well, it's okay. You were able to turn it on, and we talked about the Spark set, about how the momentum shift really changed, and we alluded to this set that you had versus None. The most interesting thing about that to me is that the last time you played None was Smash Camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up taking that one 3-1.
Yep.
So what was the difference between this? Did you come prepared for None specifically? Did you study the Falcon matchup more? What was the difference between losing 3-1 to someone and then 10 stocking them?
Well, when I lost to None at Smash Camp, and I had beaten him, I think at Don't Park last year, which was like almost a full year ago now. But I have beaten None before, and so going into it, I knew that I could win, like if I played well. At Smash Camp, I just lacked a lot of discipline, and Swedish Delight actually is a drugged fox lesson taker as well. So he actually analyzed that set, me versus None at Smash Camp, with Drug Fox. And if you are a Drug Fox Patreon, you can look at all of the previously recorded lessons, only $5 a month. And so I actually watched that lesson. Like, Drug Fox linked it to me, and he was like, you should watch this because we went over your set. And so Swedish and him went over the set, and I've just like, I don't know, I lacked a lot of discipline in areas. I was doing like kind of the easy way out for a lot of edge guards and punishes. And so I kind of just like thought about that leading up to the Nun set. And also I think that I do not think that that was necessarily a great performance by him. I do think that I was playing out of my mind in that set, and it's not really his fault, but like I could clearly tell that like I think Mewtwo King like did something mean to his soul or something. Like, it's really hard to like play Mewtwo King and he kind of camps the ledge and he like kind of fishes for back throw, and then have to play another Sheik who like you could very easily lose to, and then it's really a hard mental battle there. But yeah, I just like did the right thing way more often than I did before, and like my reaction times were just like super on point. Like, whenever I tried to react, I think I got like a 90% success rate. Granted, with Falcon, it's way easier than with Spaceys, but against Falcon, it's way easier than it is against Spaceys. But yeah, my reactions were insane. I was doing better edge guards, and I was just really focused. Like, I wasn't trying to, like prove myself necessarily. I wasn't trying to like win the tournament at that point. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna play against None. Like, I know what I should be doing. I just reverse 3-0 Spark, and like, I don't know, like, let's see what happens. And I wasn't even really processing how badly I was winning until the very end of game 3. So I win game 1. I think I don't know. I 10 stock him overall, so it has to either be a 3 or 4 stock. I think that one was.
I think it was 3-3-4, or was it 3? Yeah,
I think it was
3.
It was 3 JV4 and then 4. Because he kills himself at the end of game 2. So yeah, so the end of game 1, like, in my head it felt very even, like in neutral. I never felt like I was like owning him the whole time. But then, the game is over and I look down and I have 3 stocks and I'm like, that's kind of weird. And then in Pokemon, I think like there's a couple of things that like work out conveniently for me. I'm just playing like, I just played my game plan really well. There's spacings that you want to keep against Falcon. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like the idea of like threat zones or threat ranges that certain characters have, but a lot of times people only talk about these concepts with reference to wave dash characters. So Luigi is a very simple example where he has really, really bad aerial drift, and so he can't really short hop aerial at you. Like, he can't like run and then short hop aerial at you, Luigi. So if he wants to move across the ground to cover distance, he has to wave dash. But wave dashing puts you in lag. So if you position yourself kind of at a mid-range versus Luigi, he can't really hit you at all because you're too far for him to short hop forward air, but you're too close to where if he wave dashes into you, he's in lag still. So you can actually just stuff him with a move like F tilt or down smash or short hop fair or whatever. And so that's pretty easy for people to conceptualize, but Falcon actually has kind of similar threat ranges where, yes, he can like jump across the whole map, but there is a range outside of that, and there is a range within that. And so if you kind of stay within those 2 ranges, he has a really hard time hitting you, and his aerials have slow startup. Like, like Fox or Falco or Sheik, they have like really fast aerials, like frame 4 or 5 or 3. Falcon, I don't really know the frame data, but like, I think Nair is the fastest at 7, and Stomp is like 18 or something insane, like 16. Like, it's like definitely reactable, and then also you can crouch cancel Nair, which is his fastest aerial anyway. So actually, up air is his fastest aerial, but he can't do it late. Anyway, like, there's just certain threat ranges that you can keep against him where it's really, really frustrating for Falcon. Like Sheik, her crouch cancel game is really good. Her grab range is really good, which is actually kind of understated with reference to crouch canceling things, because you can crouch cancel things and then shield grab stuff. Whereas certain characters like Pikachu, his grab range is so small, even if he crouch cancels like a Nair, he might whiff a shield grab. But Sheik almost has Marth's grab range. So like you can crouch cancel grab like a ton of stuff from Falcon. Your tilts are really fast and they have really big hitboxes. And then also Sheik is admittedly slower than Falcon for sure, but she's still pretty fast. So like she can outmaneuver Falcon relatively quickly, especially if you take into the account that you have platforms. So like I played the movement game really well. I stuffed him when I needed to, and my punish game was like pretty good. And then my edge guarding got better over time too. And I think that combined with the fact that he was not in a very great mental state because he just got back thrown by Meech King repeatedly. Like you could tell like after the second game, he did the thing where he makes himself not get four stocked and then he runs off the stage. And like none historically, we haven't really seen it this year, but like in years past, you know, versus wobbling specifically, you know, he very clearly like he doesn't look like he's rages, like he doesn't throw his controller or make a big like fit out of it, but he, you know, is not afraid to just forfeit or like make a show out of like what he thinks the game has kind of devolved into. And so I didn't prey on that at all. Like I think I just played how I was supposed to play, but like it's so hard for him to win if I'm playing insanely well and then he's also stuck in that like mental rut.
Yeah, and that doesn't say anything bad about none at all. Like the way that this game is, there are top players who can have days where they get 10 stocked by someone who's in the similar skill range. Like I don't think going into the next tournament, I think that none would do any worse. Like this isn't really indicative of any change in his gameplay. I think you're right. It's just like that can happen to you where you just have a set like that might tilt you, and then immediately after, oh, you got to play another really good player.
Yeah,
so I agree. Like I think you could run that set a couple different times and it would be a lot more close, but we saw a very decisive version of that.
Yeah, and like I mean, we played at Smash Camp like only a couple months ago, and he won. Like, it's not like there's like if we played again, I'm not even sure I would necessarily. So like, I don't know. Sometimes that just happens, and I think that's just how it goes in the cruel world that is Melee.
I mean, especially with how we view Falcon Sheik like as the scene as a whole right now, I think is like we're pretty understanding that this could happen. That like that matchup can swing where, you know, you're, I think, about half and half with S2J this year. I think he's like 4-3 over you. You know, like you said, none beat you, and then you've very handily beaten on here. So I think like what we look at when we look at Sheik Falcon, yeah, it could be like either one going into it could win, and either person going into it could really like destroy the other. So I think this is just kind of what happens sometimes. We just don't really see it to this extent.
Yeah, and I rewatched the set, and I was just doing crazy stuff. Like, it's really not his fault that happened to him. Like, I don't know.
He was on the train tracks when a train was coming.
Yeah, he had to get out of the way, unfortunately. And yeah, so I wasn't even aware of like how bad the set was until game 3. When game 2 he like did the 4 stock, like, you know, he gets the 1 stock and then intentionally runs off the level, and I was like, wait, like did I just JV4 him like again? Like, and then, you know, I could tell like game 3 I kind of felt like he was throwing. Like, I don't know how easy it is to tell, but just like in my head, like he was doing just the stuff that like, I don't know, did not seem like indicative of his like trying his hardest. And also like the crowd was like freaking out over me owning him, which is very, very rare. It's not usual that Sheik would be the crowd favorite in Sheik Falcon.
No.
And
especially over a player like Nunn, who's such a crowd favorite.
Right, and like, you know, I'm definitely like a text chasey Sheik. I'm like kind of cool, kind of hip, whatever, but like I'm not like Plup, you know, someone who like people like really actually adore. And so it was kind of surprising to me. Also, I have noise canceling headphones, so usually it drowns out the crowd pretty well. But like I heard people freaking out when I was like four stocking him. And I was just like, what is happening? Like, what is happening to him? Where did he go? But yeah, that was that was that. And
That
then
was
I mean, I don't
something.
know. Like I think Nunn and I have like a mutual kind of. I don't think he. I don't know. I think he gets it. I think he gets that I get it, and that's just sort of we understand.
That's how
That's
it
just
is.
yeah, yeah.
So let's go on to the big one. So you played Mewtwo King in semis, and I believe that
Mhm.
ends up being, is that a 3-1? Is that what the winter
Yeah.
semis
Yep.
was?
3-1.
So do you view these two, the first set, the winter semi set, and the two grand final sets, do you view them as differences that you were making, or do you view it as something else his end, or is it, like what percentage of it is you and what percentage of it is him?
I think it's at least 80% me, maybe more.
I think so too. Okay. I'm kind of lead. I didn't want you to be like I know you're a very humble man, but I think
I am
you're right.
often want to give benefit of the doubt to people and talk about external circumstances, but I think there's a very clear difference in my game plan and my gameplay
Hmm.
from winter semis to finals. I think. I
Watching the
mean,
set, it was just so apparent that you were on a different level. And once again, when we talked about Sammy, Sammy was very vocal about that during it. He said it's not Mewtwo King messing up, it's that you're playing so well. And I think that's really important for a commentator to say, especially for a player like Mewtwo King, a player who's known to sulk, a player who is thought to be very good in this matchup, of course. So I think there might be some fans who see that result and be like, oh, well, they might start Johnning for him. But I think it's really
yeah.
important that Sammy was there to kind of dispel any of those rumors. And I think you're completely right. 80%, if not more, like the way that you played against him in those second two sets was crazy. Now, what do you think was the cause for that? This was the same day, this was an hour and a half apart. What was
Yeah.
the big change?
Well, definitely. One of the big things was I just had like a better perception of how these things were supposed to go. So like I asked if there's a ledge grab limit, and there was.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is if the game goes to time, and none of the games were even close to going to time, but if they were to go to time and someone grabbed the ledge over 60 times and the other person had not, regardless of how many stocks were left or whatever, the person who had grabbed it the 60 plus times automatically forfeits. Like that's like they lose. Basically to prevent people from intentionally timing out when they have a stock lead by camping the ledge.
Mm-hmm. And this is
And
something
so,
in this particular scenario, not like you're correct. We didn't see this. We didn't see anything close to it. But Mewtwo King was very vocal against his. He was voicing his displeasure earlier in the year when ledge grab limit was kind of teased. And I don't know if I really saw anything from him in particular about DreamHack Atlanta having one, but definitely a vocal critic of the idea of having it.
yeah, so which, definitely a bit ironic considering the fact that like maybe ironic is not the right word. Some people who would see malicious intent in there would say that Mewtwo King is being self-serving by saying that he is trying to defend the ledge grab limit when he himself is an abuser of the ledge. Canonically, even if you think about like Mewtwo King Shiz, like, nothing wrong with gimping spacies, but like Mewtwo King definitely plays to the ledge more so than most Sheiks or most top players or whatever, which is fine. But I think there is a point where like rule sets should be there to combat the most abusive of the abusive. So it's a little funny that Mewtwo King would complain about something like that. But yeah, like in the winner set, he was not afraid to go to the ledge in between stocks. And whatever. If your opponent has intangibility, that's fine. I get it. I definitely do that. I go to the ledge, Sammy stall 3 times, their intangibility's out, and then I ledge dash. That's like, I do that like every time. Mewtwo King, on the other hand, will Shino stall, wait, short hop forward air, grab the ledge. Shino stall, short hop forward air, grab the ledge. Like if he doesn't think that he can get on the stage with 0% threat, he will stay on the ledge. And that's within his right, whatever. But in the winner set, I, kind of haphazardly would attempt to challenge that. in my head, I was like, okay, Sheik stalling has holes. Like, him being on the ledge shouldn't be a good position for him. If I just grab the ledge from him, he's forced to recover, and then I can like ledge dash chain grab him or something, or at the very least like chip damage from him. But what ended up happening is I was playing like just very frustratedly at the ledge, and so I would take way too much chip damage. Sheik doesn't really get reversaled in those situations like a Spacey would, but I definitely was just like losing all of the ledge interactions. And so in the grands, set 1 and set 2, I just thought to myself, like, okay, there is a ledge grab limit, which means if I sit in center stage and he literally refuses to get off, the game will time out and he will lose. But that is like what will happen. I didn't think Mewtwo King would literally time out, but I did know. With that in mind, I was able to reframe my entire like mindset, because I was like, okay, it's fine for him to be on the ledge. Like, this is like a winning position for me finally. Like,
exactly, yeah.
It's okay. I'm literally winning the game every time he grabs the ledge. Like, the incrementer's going up. It's ticking by 1, and I was grabbing the ledge too, but nowhere near to that extent. So despite the fact that the games really didn't get close to timing out at all, so it was never really a factor in that sense, it definitely mentally gave me a big edge over my previous self, who was kind of frustrated at the ledge play. I was just like, okay, I'll sit on the top platform, I'll get a full stack of needles at the very least, which is kind of big in the Sheik Ditto, because chain grabs at low percents, like sub 20, are pretty frame tight. At 0%, it's actually frame perfect if you don't have the better port. So, if you can hit him with a couple needles, a full stack is 17, and that's huge. That means you should not be dropping the chain grab after that. So if he's going to let me get a full stack and central stage, like, that's like very good for me. So I just reframed my mindset like that, and that was really big. And then Saturday night after, so the night before top 8, but after top 24 had happened, I was staying with Drug Fox. He was housing me. And, he talked to me in Spark about, our set, because we had played in winners quarters. He kind of talked about how we, Sammy with his students is not afraid to tell us things that we're doing wrong. So basically he was like, you guys are playing neutral. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you guys are way too aggressive. You should be playing way more to the platforms. You can literally die off a grab. Like, why are you on the ground? That sort of thing. And so I didn't really use his advice in winners, obviously. But then in grands, like, I just played neutral with like sort of what Drug Fox told me in mind in neutral game, and then with a ledge grab limit in mind in between stocks. And those two things like gave me the confidence to play well. And then when I'm confident, my tech skill is really good and my decision making is really good, and I just like start playing better and better, and it just kind of gets exponential from there. So I think those two things were like the biggest difference makers, at least mentally, and then everything like kind of compounds upon itself after that.
Mm-hmm. So I want to mention, we talked about port priority. You guys did end up switching ports. Did that kind of take you out mentally, or like was there anything about that you think affected yourself? I mean, obviously not, because I think like, I mean, from the perspective of the viewer, you seem to still do pretty well. But I'm interested in like in game. How did you think that affected you?
Yeah, so I actually forgot, like, when talking about it, but you just reminded me. In the winner set, like, Mewtwo King is someone where he just adds a lot of, like, I don't know, stuff you have to do before the set. Like, he needed someone to plug in his headphones. Like, he really wanted, he was very adamant talking to me about how dumb he thinks the port thing is. Like, in most scenarios, like with Calvar or Spark and I did this too. You rock, paper, scissors, or you Game & Watch Hammer, and that is the port that you have for the entire set. And you do it, you RPS once, and if you lose, you have the worst port for the entire set. And Mewtwo King very much wanted me to tell me how dumb he thinks that is. He's like, I have a true competitor spirit, and therefore I think it should be more fair. And I don't like the idea of me winning with a better port the whole set, and I don't like the idea of me losing with the worst port the whole set. Like, I just don't think it makes any sense. And so Mewtwo King suggested the idea that the loser, so you would RPS once in the very beginning, and whoever wins gets a better port. And then after that, you would counterpick port every game. And so I was like, Mewtwo King, that's ridiculous. we were going to have to hand warm every set. I have a capacitor in my controller, and I trigger trick, which means I need to reset my controller after I plug it in every single time. And Muji King also is very particular about his controller, so I was especially surprised that he suggested that, because then he would have to hand warm after every game, or at least reset. And I was like, Muji King, that's just insane. Like, why would we do that? Like, and he was like, well, it's just way more fair. Like, you like 50-50 have the better port instead of always having it or never having it. And that's just ridiculous to me, honestly. But like, we did that. The first set is fine. So
really,
we counterpick ports every game. And I was like, like there are certain seats that are assigned to the port for the stream. Like, their overlay is set up so that one camera is for this port and the other camera is for this port. And, he was like, what do you think? Do you think they're going to DQ us like in top 8, like both of us, because we're not doing that? And I was like, like, no, they're not. But like, he was like, okay, well then I don't know. I got like, it was fine, but like I got like a little pressured into it, and like,
it is a very interesting situation. Yeah. I think like there are probably tons of stories of Mewtwo King kind of like not forcing anyone into anything, but definitely kind of cajoling them in some sort of way into maybe a decision that they don't want. What you should have done, what would have been funny. So like, this is not unlike some FGC games where you can counterpick. Like, you have a choice of what you can counterpick. I forget if it's the exact rules. I think it's something along the lines of, in Tekken you can counterpick character or stage.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if you want to pick stage, you have to stay the same character, or if you want to switch character, then you random stage select. So like, you could have done something like that, where you're like, hey, if you want to pick port, then I get to pick stage, or we're going random stage or something. Like,
it just, I don't know, it just added like,
that adds a whole, like, that's opening a can of worms, of course. But that's fine. It just reminded me of like, this is what some other fighters go through. This is just like, instead of it being a rule for the whole community, it's just one person's rule.
Yeah, and I agree with him that I think that it doesn't really make sense that this port thing, like, I don't like how it has such an effect. Like, it's only one frame, but it really does matter a lot, especially for the Sheik Ditto.
It's definitely an afterthought, I think, in a lot of the community's mind, which is just like, a lot of the community might not personally see the effects of it, just because the top player aspect of the community is very small compared to the people who go to tournaments, and especially compared to the people who watch tournaments. So like, there's going to be more people arguing for a wobbling ban or a ledge grab limit, because when you are watching the tournament, when you are the tens of thousands of people watching, you're like, oh, this one character can infinite, or like, oh, this one character, or these characters are just like not attacking. But I guess if you are a casual or even a competitive player, like, you might not see what actually comes from this as the same level. So I think that's interesting. Yeah, I never really thought of it to the same extent as something like that. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a rule set that cares about that as much as other parts of the rule set.
Yeah, and it was just like frustrating to me because I was like, Mewtwo King, like, I just want to play the set, and it took like 10 extra minutes for him to do that, and then we had to tell the stream that we were doing that, because I'm sure we're both the same character, so it's not like it would be obvious who we are, and Mewtwo King also plays red sometimes, and I always play red, so like, there is that color thing too, and I was just like, this is silly. And then every time I lost, I had to walk over to the thing, because keep in mind, we have 2 separate TVs. We're not like next to it. I have to get up out of my chair, like walk over, like, the headphone cord wasn't very long, so I had to like kind of take my headset off and then like walk over, unplug myself, plug back in, reset my controller, test shield drops, and then play. And also, he wanted to neutral start every time, so I just felt like, I don't know, I was just getting like iced like a lot from like just like how this set happened. So that's what we did for the winner semis. It was, we RPS'd for the first game, and then we counterpicked port after that. But once I got to Grands, what we decided is I would have port 4 for the first set, port 4 being the better one. And Mewtwo King, if I reset, would have port 4 for the second set.
Interesting.
Basically, the idea that we both have, kind of half, fair usage of the port, but, him being in winners means that the more important deciding set, he has the better port. I would have been fine to just RPS twice for each individual set. I've done that with Kadorn. You know, if we play 2 sets back to back, then we RPS for the first set and then we RPS again for the second set. I would have preferred that because I don't like I don't know, it just feels weird. I would rather win or lose by like RNG. I don't like the idea of like I don't know, it's just weird to have like some arbitrarily like preordained port thing. But yeah, like my chain grabs weren't that good sub 15 anyway, so the port doesn't really matter for me. But the important thing to remember is that when you have the better port, that means your opponent doesn't. So not only are your combos are your throws better, but theirs are also worse. So that's really big because like for example, like let's say you play like Jigglypuff versus Fox. Puff having the extra frame on her throws isn't really that important, but it's very important to take away that extra frame from Fox. So if you're Jigglypuff, you should always want port 4 versus Fox because that makes his throw worse, even though your throws don't really need the extra frame. But when we're the same character, it benefits me and worsens him. So yeah, so there was like that happening in winners, and then grands, like that whole like weirdness of walking and getting up every time like was gone. And then I was just like, I don't know, I was just really focused. Like I knew that if I didn't approach the ledge and if I played how I was supposed to be with the platforms, like I could totally win. I mean, I took a game in winners even despite like all the mistakes I was making. And then so now that I'm more composed and also playing out of my mind, like I wasn't thinking that I was going to win, but I was just really focused. Like even during the first set, when I was up 2-0, like I wasn't thinking like, oh my goodness, like I might 3-0 Mewtwo King. I was just like, okay, like I'm just playing. I'm just like doing the things that I'm supposed to.
Just completely in the zone, right?
Yeah. But I will say in the second set, I was like, wait, I could win. And then that definitely, I thought about that more, but I think like I was just playing too well for that to really
yeah, I mean, that's scary.
Deter me.
Because that could really affect you. But yeah, you were on a different level. Right after you beat Calvar, actually, in Loser's Quarter, as I mentioned in the Melee Stats podcast Discord server, link to which is in the description, which you are also a part of.
Yes.
Throw your Griff wins in the chat. I mentioned how any one of the players could win the tournament, like to varying levels of believability. But like you, Spark, I think we're both scary for Mewtwo King because of the Sheik Ditto, of course. Like it's very volatile, even though that is something that he's been known to excel in the past. S2J and none have both taken sets. We saw that wasn't really going to be the case this tournament for either of them to really win over him. But yeah, I mean, like Dorian, I realized that any one of them could win, and I think that you really just like as the tournament progressed, it was apparent that it was you. Like your level of play just excelled through the tournament. And
yeah, it was definitely my opportunity to seize, and I did. Yeah, it's pretty. I don't know. It's definitely surprising. Like I wasn't going into this tournament with the thought that I was like, okay, I'm going to win. I was going into it with like, okay, 4th seed is pretty fair. I wouldn't be surprised to get, 4th or better, but I wasn't expecting to win necessarily. Like this is definitely like the biggest tournament I've won over like the strongest competition, at least. Like, I've won regionals over players of kind of similar skill to S2J and None. I've won Ultimate Nimbus over, I think, beating Fiction and Lucky and Army, who you could argue now anyway that Fiction, is kind of on the same level as S2J and None.
Yeah. And then add the fact that you did that right after, what was it, House of Pain 2021?
Yeah, one of those. Where I beat KJH and Ginger, and Michael, who are around the skill level, obviously not Mewtwo King level, but so I have won events in the past with players that are top 40, top 30, but this is definitely the biggest win I've ever had, and I've never, if you want to count this as a god win or whatever, I mean that terminology is kind of outdated now that
Yeah.
you know we have people like Leffen and Plup and Axe and Wizzy and whatever Zane.
I think this is
doing
the
their
year
thing.
where it finally, like, it probably meant a lot less in the past 3-4 years, maybe even.
Yeah,
But this is the year that it probably just altogether crumbles when we see multiple gods not attending stuff because they're retired or, like PPMD's hiatus. Or we just see players like Mewtwo King just not going to stuff for a long time. Yeah, I mean, I think that the era of the 5 gods being the only 5 people who like really dominate is well over. So that should probably end this year. But regardless, like he is a top 10 player. He is a player who has been putting up really incredibly strong results. On
yeah. I mean, he's
par.
beaten Hungrybox multiple times, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like beating Hungrybox multiple times, being able to beat the tier of players like None and players in that skill range. It's very impressive. Even if he has wins, if he's losses to people like Fiction, he's still like proven that he's a top 10 player or like Plup Amsa level of play. So this is definitely impressive. Do you feel like there's more eyes on you now after this? This was, like you did mention, this was the biggest event, probably the most watched tournament that you've won as well, I would assume.
Yeah, definitely the most notable in the purest sense of the word.
You're
like,
in Armada thumbnails now.
yeah, I had an insane amount of Facebook messages from my friends, some of whom I didn't even like, high school friends that I didn't even know played or watched Melee. Like it was literally the first message they'd ever sent me on Facebook, and like I hadn't talked to them IRL in like 8 years, and they were
Wow.
like, dude, I saw you beat Mewtwo King, like good job. And like I had like 30 of those messages, and like I had a ton of Twitter DMs and like Discord stuff obviously, and like I just had like a ton of support from people, which was really awesome, really surprising. I think it's kind of understated how important like having that sort of support is. Like this tournament, kind of like you said, was sort of like perfect in the sense that like Drug Fox was commentating. I like Drug Fox was housing me. Like just being there with someone that I look up to a lot, someone who's like quite literally like trained and mentored me, mattered a lot, because I had like that sort of like emotional support system, if you will. Like I had like Spark was there, who I'm really good friends with. Like I had like other friends were there where like I could sort of like hear their cheers from the crowd and like kind of feel their like positive vibes from the area. Like that matters a lot, I think. That's just sort of conducive to like putting you in a good mental state, and then once you're there, like your skill level kind of takes over. But yeah, there's definitely more eyes on me now, quite literally. I don't know, I don't think that this is necessarily like, I think it is a breakout performance in the sense that obviously this is the like most notable event I've won. Like
Yeah.
Mewtwo King, I mean, I beat Axe this year, and Axe is going to be ranked higher than Mewtwo King, so it's maybe not like my best win, but it's definitely the most impressive, I think, in the sense that it was 6-0, it was over, someone I was not favored against, and I did it back-to-back, whereas, like, most of my other times, I get a really big win. I'm not winning the tournament. Like, I beat Axe, I smashed Camp at the beginning of this year, and then I lost to him in losers, right? So the win is still good, but it's like not as impactful, doesn't like feel like it's as meaningful.
Yeah.
And this is definitely just like, yeah, there are definitely going to be more people paying attention to me, which
Yeah,
I guess is fine.
I mean, it's a huge event. Even if DreamHack Atlanta is not normally the biggest DreamHack, this is still something that a lot of people are watching. You have it over one of the most popular players to the casual audience. He's the Mewtwo
definitely.
King is like the first person that people know when it comes to Smashers.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
yep.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Is this the most impressive like series of wins? I guess a series of wins maybe, but like as individual wins, it's not incredibly far off from what we'd expect. But I think that's the thing. Like, the people who know your play and the people who've been following the scene, this is not incredibly, it's not out of the realm of possibility to happen, but like just everything on this level, yeah, it's really, really good. It's a lot of people who I think were like, oh, that top 50 player, he's really good now.
Yeah, yeah. Despite well, the summer rankings did
Yeah.
not have that much data, but if you were to look at them, this wasn't necessarily that big of a surprise. But yeah, I mean, it definitely all like. I feel like from my perspective, it like finally came together. I guess like I feel like I've been capable of this sort of performance for a really long time.
Mhm.
I think I've improved a ton in the past year alone, but definitely if you look past like 2 or 3 years, I'm way better now than I was before. But even um I don't know if it was 2 or 3 years ago, but like I beat Silent Wolf, and when he was considered like the Sheik Slayer, he had actually just beaten Drug Fox's Sheik. Like if you remember, like I wasn't even top 100 yet, and I had wins like that, and I had
Yeah.
wins over Lucky and stuff at I don't know if you remember that it was in Emerald City. Me and Crush were there.
Oh
Whatever.
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I beat Silent Wolf and Crush beat Bladewise, which was like the first time in a really long time where Bladewise and Silent Wolf played for fourth at a Washington tournament
That's
because
wild.
they were both in losers. And that was before Crush was insane too. Obviously, like he was
Hmm.
not top 100 either. But
Yeah, I think he debuted at like 99 or 98 or something like that, and then I think you debuted. Were you in the 40s or were you just in the?
yeah, I was like 45 or
Okay,
something.
yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I've been capable of kind of something like this for a while. Obviously I've improved, but I've been capable of something like this, and finally it kind of just like came together and happened. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast how there are a lot of parallels with this bracket and like Smash Camp, for example. At Smash Camp, I lost to Mango game 5 last stock, a lot closer than I think it had right to be, but then Mango lost to Spark and losers, so maybe he just wasn't playing that well. But like, I was not expecting for it to be that close. But like, so I beat like, man, I beat Spark in losers semis at Smash Camp, basically like the exact same position, and then I played none in losers finals, which is literally the same losers semis and losers finals of this event. But the difference at Smash Camp was I just got third. I lost to none. It wasn't I think I took a game, but it wasn't like super a nail biter. And I feel like that's always kind of how my tournaments have been. Like, I get 1 or 2 really good wins. I don't really get upset because I'm like pretty consistent player, but like that's how it ends. I'm not like winning these events. So, and like don't park on the grass like 2018. I beat none. I beat Commaster. I beat Spud, and then I
Mhm.
lost to Swedish for fourth. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's just like kind of how it's been for me. Like a very solid, like someone who could get top 15 wins, top 20 wins, but like, casual 5th place at really large regionals. But it's really cool to like finally,
Oh, for
not
sure.
only beat good players, but also like win. Like that's really nice to
Yeah.
actually get one.
This is, like I said, if you're following the scene, if you know your play, if you know your results, this is not out of the realm of possibility. This should not defy anyone's expectations, but it's for all of what we expect to come together and lead to this. That's a great accomplishment. Um, Now, we've been talking about this for over an hour. We got a little more of the bracket that I want to get to, but first, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask the question that I assume all top players hate to be asked, unless you're Hungry Bucks, and the answer is easy. Where do you think you should be ranked this year?
Oh,
Yeah, this is what the fans want to hear.
uh, okay. Well, I guess this is different for me
You
more
can just
so
give
than
me like a tier of players who you think you might be in the same rank as, or even like a range of numbers. Like you don't have to say 13th or something like that. You don't have to be
yeah.
with utter certainty.
Okay, well, the boring answer is probably like 14 to 20, I think.
Okay,
And the reason I say that's boring is because that's just like a wide range.
that
Like
is a wide
despite
range.
it only being 6 spots, like I think like there's a pretty clear like results gap between like whoever 13 is. I don't know, like Moki or something, and like 20. And yeah, I mean, I was 17 on the summer rankings, and I was kind of benefited by
Mm.
I had data. Like I was 1-0 on bananas, and I was like 1-1 with axe, and like I think like 2-1 on army or something, and like 1-0 on SVJ, like which are like very very good results, but like kind of sparse just via the nature of how the first half of the year was, with like most of the gods being AFK and like not
Yeah.
as many events as before. Um, and some of the players. Bananas was the top 20 win at the time. I don't really think he's had those results since. Same with Army. And so now those wins are kind of less valuable than they were at the beginning of the year, despite them being in the same ranking.
Yeah.
Like that. So I felt like I was 17, kind of like I deserved it in the sense that, I had those results, but like the ranking as a whole wasn't very, like there wasn't an abundance of data. But now I feel like I like actually kind of deserve to be there. Like it makes sense, like skill wise, I think. So yeah, I mean, 14-ish, 15-ish, 17-ish. I've kind of always been a player that has never really had bad results. I lost to my worst loss this year, I think, is Legend at Genesis. Well, if you're only looking at big tournaments, I have lost to locals, obviously, but at like big tournaments, my worst loss is Legend, and I think was he in like the 70s or something?
Legend was, I think he was like 85 or so, in that range. He is a player who I think it's a weird one to say for him because he's been attending like nothing this year. And I know even locals, he hasn't really attended as much. And I know that over the past 2 years, he tried to play Marth because he thinks that Marth and Puff are the best characters, so he wants to play both of them. So I think like if you were to look at his actual results, you might have a weird story because there's not a lot of them, and some of them might not be his main character. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a strong player. I mean, he beat Captain Faceroll this year, so
right. I mean, if you use circular reasoning, then he's insane. And therefore, my loss isn't that bad because he beat me. Therefore,
it's a very strong player. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think looking at the rank, I think Swedish, we've seen a little less from him this year. Pew Pew is ranked above you. That, I think, is something that was made sense at the time, but I think maybe might be a little bit dated. And even someone like Triff, we've seen Triff lose a lot of European tournaments, lots of losses to Sechi. We really haven't seen these. I mean, we saw him beat Fiction. We saw him take that tournament. But outside of that, we haven't really seen the same performances that we've seen. I could see you, anywhere from 14, 15, 16, maybe even. I think that you've got an incredible case for top 15. Obviously, you have players like Nunn who have catapulted into that range, so it makes it a little harder to say. But I think, top 15, let's say it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think rankings are like... I think that if you care a lot about your own personal ranking, you are doing it wrong.
Yeah. They're not the end-all, be-all. I think a ranking's a report card, right? And you should never look at a ranking and say, okay, well, the 7th best player in the world is obviously going to beat the 14th best player in the world. Because it just doesn't work like that. There's so many weird intricacies to how this game is, where some top players are going to be bet against other top players and stuff like that. And I could go on for... I mean, we talked a decent chunk today, just detailing your experience, so I don't want to make it go any longer. But I could do a whole episode about the outside factors that lead to rankings. Like I made a tweet the other day. I said, right now, who would you rank higher, Kevin Maples or Billy Butt Peep? And they got a dead even tie, basically. And I made a tweet about it. I said, this is really interesting to see. Kevin Maples is a player who got his best wins on stream. SFAT and Toussaint were both streamed, and they were in the course of one month span. I think 3 weeks in between Smash Con and Shine. And Shine leading to him being on stream on the finals day because they did top 12 on stream. Compare that to Billy. Billy's best wins have not been streamed. He's beaten S2J. He's beaten Mike Hayes. He's beaten Shroomed. He's beaten Dreffen. I think he beat Ryan Ford on a side stream, like a tertiary stream on Big House Top 64 day. So even that barely anyone saw, I would assume. So I think it's all a matter of stuff like that. I mentioned France as a player who's going to benefit a lot from the rankings because he's got a fun character and all of his wins happened at the same time. Just it's so odd. We talked about how commentators can push these narratives, and I think that there's a lot of ways where just being on stream or getting your wins at a tournament would do. Like you mentioned Kadoran this entire time. He's a player that people have mentioned, you shouldn't have locals. counted for top 100. And then I'd say, well, if you don't want locals counted for top 100, then don't do top 100, because someone like Kadoran's not going to be top 100.
Right.
It's obvious, like, through skill that he's proven that. It's just like, I guess at this point with he has some more regional results that I guess would be a little better. But yeah, I think it's wild to see like just how much these rankings can change with all these outside things. But it's just a fun little question. Do you want to move on to? Do you have anything else to say, or do you want to move on to like kind of some of the more surprising performances, some of the better performances? I've got a couple things to talk about from the bracket if you want to move on.
I would love to go on to our next item
It's
about Atlanta.
Not going to be too long. We're already kind of running a little long on the episode.
I honestly do not mind at all. I'm sure your viewers don't want to listen to a 3-hour podcast. But
you've been on the longest episode we've had.
I know, and that's probably not. It's partly my fault for sure. So
don't say that.
There we go.
There's no way to have a National Arcadian preview episode without it going 2.5 hours. I'm surprised we kept it to 2.5. Because I've had episodes with Webs where we talk about nothing, and I swear it lasts like just as long. So I have some like I talked to you about this earlier. I have some winners and losers, and I was like, well, losers is rough. That's a mean thing to say. But then I was like, well, everyone lost this tournament except for you, and then you agreed. You did get sent to losers.
Yep, I did lose a set. That's actually something I really like about Melee, where you can find solidarity with everyone. Like, do you think Nunn, who's a top 15-ish player, getting third at a tournament like this, do you think he's happy with his performance at all? No, obviously. If you look at his Twitter, he talked about Muta King camping the ledge and how Sheik Falcon is 70-30, whatever. But like, if you were to compare that to someone who doesn't make it out of pools, if they got third, they would be out of their gourd, dude. Like third, oh my god, like damn, like they beat S2J, like like they'd be freaking out. But like, even someone who doesn't make it out of pools has solidarity with Nunn and the fact that they're pissed that they lost. Like, I just think that's cool. But
I agree. Well, so I picked some people. Obviously, like if you were to say winners and losers of the event, it would be you as winners and everyone else is losers. So that's why I tried to pick a couple of people who, what we expect of them, it's a win for them, or maybe top players who this would be considered a disappointment from what we've seen from them. So I have a couple categories. Winners, I'm have ready. As California Sheiks and unranked Samus players.
Yes, Samuses were insane this tournament.
The Samuses were insane. Well, this actually goes into my losers section, because the losers are players in their 30s and Southerners.
Oh.
Yeah. So we saw some incredible Samus play. Hugs, I think this was maybe something that we'd expect from him. I think his main stage gave us hope that this was not what we'd expect, but probably goes back to like regression to the mean for him. We see him lose to Spark, which is not very surprising, even after Sparks lost to Morse Code recently. And then we see him lose to Vu, which is, I think, like the third or fourth Florida player to beat him this year, which is a little rough.
Yeah, I mean, technically he was seeded to lose to Sparks, so I mean, that's Sheik Samus, and Sparks beaten him before, so
no surprise.
I'm not surprised about that. I am very surprised when people talk about Samus as a character in the position in her tier list and her top tier matchups. Normally they say like, she gets kind of destroyed by Sheik and Falcon and Puff and maybe Marth, depending on who you talk to. But like, at least she has doable spacey matchups. Like you have people who say that she goes even with Fox and Falco, and then you have more reasonable people who say that she loses to Fox and Falco, but she has the ability to kill them in one hit. And if you're the better player, you win neutral, and that's sort of that. So from my perspective, I'm not really that familiar with Vu. I know he's ranked in Southern Florida. I know I talked to Pengi a bit. Pengi said that he's good, and obviously Vu performed well at this tournament, but I'm not someone who's super familiar with him. But when I look at Falco, an unranked Falco, and I'm not, like I said, very familiar with Vu, but I don't even know if he's like going to be on the ballot for top 100. Would you say that he...
I would say he probably misses it, even this year where we have a lot of people who I think are ballot worthy. South Florida strikes me right now as kind of a weird region. Obviously, the players that they had ranked don't really play anymore. DeShizwiz and Flipsy both currently top 100, but don't really play, and it's pretty outdated. So we look at their PR, I guess, and you'd see a couple players who I think are top 200 level. Vu, I think, is one of them. I think Prof, another player who's beaten Hugs, I think he is one of them. I think there's a lot of really strong CFL or SFL players, but it's just like one of those weird things where we might not be seeing a ton of them. So I don't think they really hit their breakout onto the level of being like a top 100 level player, but wouldn't be surprised if, with the level of Florida turns we have, if there are enough chances for them to break out, that they will.
Right. And so like South Florida is basically, it's like pretty good, but it's not insane. It's not Central Florida, whatever. Yeah. And so when in my head, if I were to look at Hugs versus Vu, top, Samus player for forever, maybe his results haven't been that good as of late because he's been, streaming, playing Ultimate, whatever. Still top 50 player at the very least, was like top 30, 20 last year. And then I look at Vu, who is someone who's not even, I mean, he's close to top 100, but he's not even on the ballot probably. And he plays Falco. In my head, a Falco, like what? Like there's no way he's going to upset a floaty that's better than him. Like there's no way that happens. Yet he does. Like that's a very surprising result to me. I think when I heard that, I was confused.
Yeah, but it's weird to see because we've seen this from Hugs before at his in SmashCon. He lost to Bones. I think he's MDVA right now. He's been a couple different places in the tri-state.
I actually did not know that result.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see. So I was not surprised. I don't know if I would say I expect it. I have the horrible thing where like I see Hugs and losers, and I look to see his bracket, and I'm wondering, well, which of these unranked players will upset him?
Yeah.
So I'm not completely surprised. I think it's like, I think Pikachu 942 actually, me and her had a similar thought about this because we were like, didn't this already happen? And then we were both thinking about Prof beating him.
Yeah.
So I'm not completely surprised, but in like the macro sense of this is a top 50 Samus player who lost to a Falco player who's not going to be on the ballot, who's like maybe in the top 200 or maybe in the top 150, probably in the top 200 or so. I think that's a little surprising, but yeah, it's just like, I guess Samus is a type of character that when Hugs has proven to put work into his play, he's improved a great deal, which is something that I don't think we get to talk about enough as being impressive. There's so many players out there who we've seen stagnate or we've seen kind of have like peak ranks and then move back to what they were before. But we've seen Hugs do this on multiple different occasions where he will be highly ranked. He will be occupied with other stuff and he'll go very far down the ranks. And then he'll just be like put his attention back in Melee and he can go back to being highly ranked. I think he went from like 20 something to 30 something to 15. Like, I don't know how many other top players could jump that much at will by just putting their attention back into the game. So I think that's really impressive. And I just think we're seeing him again at a time where he might not be putting as much attention to the game. But I want to talk about the Samus players who I think are paying attention to the game. Do you have any thoughts about people like the Swooper or Wevins?
Yeah, so, well, I have more thoughts on the Swooper specifically because I actually watched him versus Spark. I didn't really get to see. I know that he's sort of, I think he's a player that, like, is a pretty, like, I would say pretty clearly top 100, at the very least guaranteed on the ballot, but, like, pretty clearly I'd say he definitely has a better case than a lot of the top 120-ish people, but, like, not really that talked about. Maybe part of that's Samus, maybe part of that's, I don't know, other stuff, but like I think he's definitely better than like what his level of notoriety is right now. Yeah, I'm surprised that, well, when okay, you can say what you're gonna say and then I'll build off because I have a lot of things that I'm
about the Super specifically,
or sure, you can go Super, just any other Samuses you wanted to go over. Wevins or Super, whatever you want.
I think Wevins probably had the more, even though he placed 9th and Super placed top 8, I think Wevins probably was a little more impressive in just raw wins. The Magi win is so, like, that's such a good win for Wevins. He's someone who's beaten Bobby Big Balls this year, so it's not incredibly shocking to see him do so well against Falco, but this is just a kind of a different scenario. completely.
Yeah.
He's one of the people who he had a little bit of bracket luck in the sense that he played Odie instead of Odie upset Ryan Ford, so like it was kind of a little bit of a different scenario. But I think that was in losers anyway, so that really shouldn't matter. But
right.
Super,
well,
yeah,
that was also I think that was Hax's pool too. So Hax DQ'd and Ryan Ford got upset. That pool
Hax DQ'd, Ryan Ford got upset, and Mog got DQ'd into losers.
Right. So that bracket
what a pool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think everything you said about the Super is correct. He's kind of a player who I think has gone under the radar just because, kind of like Kadora, and a lot of his great wins are on like a regional level. But if you look at it, he does pretty well out of region as well. He's beaten Bananas. He beat Bananas at Smash and Splash.
Yep.
He's got that weird Jersey thing that like Edwin Budding DMs me about. These Jersey players are so weird. There's one player in Jersey, except for like Swedish, I guess, who doesn't lose to anyone who's worse than them, and then every time they go out to a national, they just don't really do too well. And that's Itai. And every other player on the PR, like the numbers don't matter. It could be the 15th best player on the PR versus the 4th best player, and it could be anyone. Like, it'll be so funny when someone like the Swooper, who you are correct, is a top 100 talent, when you see all the losses to Hoborg and Acidics and like...
Yeah, those, I don't even know who Acidics is, so...
Yeah, there's like... Jersey's so weird because you can have a player who does so well. Like, I feel like J-Flex could go and get like top 48 at like a big tournament and then come back and then he would lose to like HDHR or something, and then Bambi. Yeah. Like the New Jersey results are so funny. But yeah, sorry, I just want to mention the Swooper. Definitely a player who has proven to be a talented player. Anything you want to add on to that?
Nah, I mean his bracket was definitely convenient, I guess. Looking at round one, he plays Mewy, who I believe is Icy's.
Mewy is an Icy player. Yeah, beat and Skittles because... Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say it's only because of this, but I know that Skittles had an SD game 3, which is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, Wobbling was banned, so...
Wobbling was banned, so if there's no way... Like, I'm not saying anything that it is a tainted win or whatever, but...
Yeah, it's just like... He's beaten Bananas before, and also Wobbling's banned, and it's Samus Icy's, like...
Yeah.
And I think at Shine 2018... that is an event that has draft crews. I think it's the only national that has draft crews as an event. And so I was on a crew. I think we were like 3rd seed or something, and we played against an all Samus crew.
Yeah,
so
that was.
It had Swooper, Hugs,
Dark Gen X, I think.
Yeah, Dark Gen X, 2 other Samuses that I'm so sorry I don't remember who they were.
Maybe Leon? Was he on there?
Yeah, actually, it was Leon, and it wasn't Plup. I know that, but it was some other Samus that was. Reasonably good, but the Swooper, so we actually so they were all Samuses, and I think the Swooper like either 4 or 3 stocked Cool Lime on FD, and it was like insane. Like his game plan was like missile in place. It looked like it had no business working. But anyway, when I think of the Swooper versus Ices, I think given the fact that I saw that in person and then also that he's beaten Bananas, I'm not surprised at all that he beat Mewy. And then he was slated to play Dreffen, but Dreffen lost to Den.
Yeah. I mean, what I said about 30
South Carolina
players. Den, I believe, is a Fox player. Den is, oh my god, it's one of those southern states where like
I want to say either South or North Carolina.
No, I think it's either Tennessee or Kentucky. I want to say Tennessee though.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna. Oh yeah, you're right. He's 5th in Tennessee. Okay,
let's go.
Yeah, so that obviously Dreffen like gonna be way harder than a Fox because Samus goes even with Fox and Sheik destroys Samus. So based off that, like definitely a convenient bracket for Swooper. And then he plays Hi-Fi, who made insane upsets. I don't know if you were gonna talk about Hi-Fi eventually, but.
I didn't have a clever thing to say. Like, I was grouping players up in clever little ways. But California Sheiks, 30-something play. I was just going to say Hi-Fi did really well.
Sammy
and Calabar, that's great.
Yeah, that's really good. Also, me, Spark, and Hi-Fi are all Sammy students.
I didn't know Hi-Fi was.
Yeah, and actually so Sammy was housing me, Dark Fox, and so he actually mentioned Hi before the tournament even started that like he thought Hi-Fi was getting way better. Like he mentioned Hi-Fi as someone who was actually taking a lot from the lessons. Like there are people who take lessons, and like I used to take guitar lessons when I was a wee lad, and I never practiced. So the only time I played guitar was at those lessons, and so the lessons were basically worthless. And so some people with Sammy lessons don't really use them as much as they could, but George Fox literally mentioned Hi-Fi as someone who he thought was like using some of the most
Interesting.
like improving the most from them. And then Hi-Fi went on to get 2 very good wins. So
Yeah. I mean, we've seen
shout outs
Hi-Fi. Hi-Fi, he is North Carolina. I think he's currently 3rd on their PR, and I think the PR before that he was unranked. North Carolina was going through this weird thing where Sharks was number 1, and then he stopped playing. And I believe Hi-Fi was also not playing as much, so they had Babich as number 1, the Falcon player. But I think if you look at their bracket, which I know is ELO, so take that as you will. I think Hi-Fi is number 1. I think people would probably just give it to Hi-Fi as the effective number 1 North Carolina player. So that's really cool because unless I misremember, I think we did see a little bit of a phase where he wasn't really attending as much. So to see him putting it back into the game and seeing these results is really great.
Yeah, being number 1 in North Carolina is very good, given the history that state has had.
Yeah.
To say you're amongst the people who can call themselves number 1 in North Carolina is very good. It's kind of similar to SoCal Arcadian winners.
Yeah, I mean he's as good as PPMD by that logic.
Right, that's what I'm trying to say. Yes,
Yeah.
So he's PPMD too.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one. He did a really great job this tournament. Speaking of Magi, a little bit of we talked about 2 people who beat her. A bit of a disappointing performance from her, but someone who, I think, has kind of fluctuated a little bit this year. So this doesn't make me think, anyway, that she would be losing, the next tournament she goes to, or oh no, she won't make it out of pools at the next major. I'm not really worried for her at all, especially because this run, oddly enough, even though it was kind of a disappointment for her, she still managed to 3-0 or 3-1. I know there's some contention about what the score actually was, but she ended up beating King Momo, who is a very solid player in his own right.
Yeah.
So I just want to mention her before we go on, because we did talk about 2 people who beat her.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Hi-Fi has beaten her before, right? Wasn't there a smaller local that they played?
That's a good question. I know she talked about... Actually, I want to bring this up because I brought this up in the podcast Discord server. On my episode with her, the Big House recap episode, it was a great time. She mentioned they have 1 puff in region who doesn't play anymore, and I said, oh, it's Citrus, right? And she wasn't impressed. I think this is incredibly impressive. I need more people to say that I'm impressive. I do this show off the top of my head. I have look at brackets every now and then, but this shit comes from deep in the brain.
Right, straight off the dome. I mean, you
Straight
knew
off
Den
the
was from
dome.
Tennessee, right? And I thought...
I think I said Kentucky or Tennessee, but I'll take it.
Yeah, it's fine. I will give you the props. Good job.
Well, I think the issue is Grab, who is also at this tournament, is from Kentucky, but is number 1 in Tennessee.
Yeah, one of the scenes doesn't really have that many tournaments, right?
No, he's also in Bowling Green, which I don't know actually anything about that. I don't know if I'm pretty sure it's closer to Tennessee than it is the big stuff going on in Kentucky, but who knows? But yeah, I mean, obviously there's a little bit more we can say. I don't think there's too much more. I remember I was talking about there's a couple players who are top 100-esque, top 100 level, who are coming into this. And we saw a lot of them, with the exception of Mog, who got DQ'd into losing to Ryan Ford, which is a very acceptable performance.
Yeah, I heard he got screwed kind of by Smash UG stuff.
Yeah, that's a shame. I know
that
Reeve, he signed up the day before.
Yeah,
So it was probably Mog looking at his old bracket and then his bracket getting changed. That's a disappointment.
Okay.
I would assume that's the case.
Well, they did tweet that some of the stuff got swapped around.
Yeah, but when you tweet, that doesn't get to everyone. It's
Yeah,
like,
no, yeah, definitely. I mean,
it's like
yeah,
when
for
people
sure.
can say whatever they want, and then like a correction article comes out. The people like who see the first article never see the like the. It's always more people who see the first article than the correction article.
Of course, yeah. And I will just say, I always check my brackets literally right before I go to bed to double check my scheduling. So,
You sleep with
not
it
really
under your
his.
pillow so you can
Yeah,
learn all the matchups.
not that it's his fault, but like, there's enough
No,
that like the
yeah.
people are like the bracket organizers and TOs are looking at that they can't account for. Even like when the software goes awry. So
It's a shame. Yeah, obviously, like this is not anything that is ideal for either TO or player.
Right.
But there's probably not a ton of blame that needs to be assigned to anyone. It's just kind of a
yeah, and he
annoying
almost beat
situation.
Ryan Ford too. The bracket says it was game 3, so
Yeah, I believe it. He's a really talented player. He's amassed a bunch of great wins. One of
did
those
well in
things.
doubles too. Actually, well, we didn't talk about doubles at all. I just wanted.
That's
He
all
did
we
well
need
in
to
doubles.
say. What more can you say?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about this. Like we mentioned basically all of the people who I think were really interesting going into this, the people who really succeeded. The only person we haven't mentioned is Billy Bo Peep.
Yep. Well, actually, we haven't really talked about Calvar either. Calvar had one of the.
Oh yeah, I mean, we talked about your performance with him. We talked about how he lost to
Right.
Hi-Fi. He had that really close set with Cobol, where both game 3 and 4 ended like super crazy ending, and then game 5 also had a really crazy ending, could go either way. And then he had something very similar in top 8, where Vu was like one double dip away from winning. But
Oh
it was
yeah.
really weird. Like I don't know if he would have hit with the double dip because I don't think he could drift close enough with his positioning. I don't really remember off the top of my head, but
He like downered. He maybe not could have not double dipped, but he like up B'd instead of air dodging. It was
yeah.
just like a bad. He should have air dodged. Sorry, Vu. You got to air dodge there. You can't up B.
Yeah, good performance
Yeah.
from Calvar though. Like I called him on my ballot. I said he was just outside the top 50. I thought his performances were pretty solid. We saw a little bit more shaky results from him recently. I guess like the A rookie loss at Shine probably comes to mind. But
They were so close to rematching too.
they were
tournament.
If it weren't for Reeve. Also, that wasn't supposed to win. That was going to happen in losers too. Yeah, Vu didn't lose to or if Vu didn't beat A rookie. Yeah,
Yep.
wow. It's just
In
meant
top
to
8.
be.
Oh my god, it was good. That would have been so much vitriol. But
That would have been crazy.
alas.
And I think we might say alas for the episode as well. I think we're coming to a close. Was there any dying thoughts that you need to get out about DreamHack Atlanta?
Mewtwo King was also aware of the ledge grab limit, by the way. I rewatched the VOD commentary, and Max Ketchum kind of stipulated on he was like, well, I don't know. Are they both aware of it, or is only Faceroll aware of it? Mewtwo King was actually... So before we played Grands, I wanted to know if there was a ledge grab limit, because like I talked about, I felt like I was kind of playing into ledge too much. And so I asked a TO, and it took a while. And then it took like 5-10 minutes, and the TOs finally got back to us because the website had the wrong rules. So we had to like ask a TO in person. And yeah, so they told me there was a ledge grab limit. And then so I walk up to Mewtwo King, by the way. I tell him face to face, and I'm like, oh, there's a ledge grab limit, by the way. And he's like, oh yeah, I know. So I should have just asked him, I guess, if he knew. But yeah, I just want everyone to know. It's not like I kept that a secret or anything.
Yeah, there was kind of a weird narrative going on through that, but I didn't believe it.
It is what it is. We were both aware that if the game were to time out, then cliffhangers may have played a part. But yep, that's all I had to say.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, if people want to follow you and your adventures on Twitter, this is one I usually try to do off the top of my head. I will also off the dome. I usually do people's ats, and I really can't remember yours. I want to say it's like, I know it's not Captain Faceroll. Can you help me out here?
Yes, it is at SSBM _Faceroll.
It's probably the next best guess that I could have made.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Well, people can follow you there. They can see that tweet about working full time and winning tournaments. Call you Captain Bankroll. Anything else you want to plug? Are you already plugged Sammy lessons? Was there anything else in addition?
No, I think that's it. I just want to shout out again all my friends and stuff friends and fans who gave me a lot of positive support. I mean, I don't know, in person and on the internet, it's definitely appreciated. It means a lot. I spent like a long time replying to everyone. Like if you scroll down my Facebook Messenger, it's just like tons and tons of people. So
Oh boy.
I just want to say I appreciate it. Even if you didn't message me personally, like I just feel the energy, you know. It's definitely a nice thing to have.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think we're coming to a close here. I really had a great time. Thank you so much for being on. It's hard to fit your schedule around all of the locals that you're always winning. So
Yep.
I'm very grateful this happened on an off week for the UCI local.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a blast having you on, and we'll have to have you on again next time. I guess it won't be nearing 2 hours. We'll see if we can actually do it.
I believe in us. But yeah, it's always a great time. I enjoy talking to you and the other Melee Stats members. So.
Yeah, and if you wanted to do so as well, you could join the Melee Stats Podcast Discord server, link to which is in the description. You're going to talk to you can talk to people like me. You can talk to people like Faceroll, other members of Melee Stats, other top players who are in there. It's a really good time. There's nerds from every region. If you want to talk about Melee, that's a great place to do it. You can support us on Patreon. We have deep dives weekly coming to you. Once again, the most popular weekly Melee-specific Smash podcast. And you have When's Melee, which is one of the greatest assets to knowing when a tournament is. And also might be something else. I don't know. At the time of this recording, there is no official announcement, but by the time this comes out, we might see another thing that you could support us for doing. So you can do so at patreon.com/melee-stats, the link to which is going to be in the description. Faceroll, Griffin, thank you so much for being on. It's always a pleasure.
Of course. Thanks again for having me.
I'd love to. All right, for Melee Stats, I am Gimme That Wheat. Thank you for listening, everyone.